Hi.
Hello again. We're on the last 2 pages of this wonderful chapter, The Challenge of Christian Freedom. In Search of Christian Freedom, page 653, Ray has been addressing the issue of venting and attitude let out prematurely, perhaps, before you've given yourself a chance to moderate your feelings and come out with a more measured response. Mm-hmm. And he's stressing the point that we need to stress too, namely that we don't want to feed the Watchtower's persecution complex.
It's too easy now to say things over internet.
Yeah. With rapid communications being what it is, we can only do damage
if we're not careful. Yeah.
There is an effort, he says, on the part of the witness leadership to make it appear that any publicly made expression of disagreement with them and any presentation of refutational evidence of their teachings and policies is a persecution of them. If that were actually the case, then there's no question that their own course would mark them as among the worst persecutors today, for they regularly and constantly publish their disagreement with other religions and endeavor to prove their teachings to be false. They are quick to seize upon news items reflecting negatively on other religions and publish these. They must expect to be judged by the same standards with which they judge others. And here he refers to Matthew 7, stop judging lest ye be judged. And yes, it's a classic case of getting back what you dole out regularly. Mm-hmm. But by such misrepresentation of matters, they can justly justify their use of harsh expressions towards any questioning their claims and views.
My own experiences with the men heading the Watchtower organization or witness organization were ultimately unpleasant. I did not believe it possible that the men I had known and worked with for years, before whom I had expressed myself, my convictions and concerns in hundreds of collective discussions, could take the kind of actions or employ the type of methods they did. Yet I can honestly say that I do not now, nor have I in the past, harbored any sense of rancor. There was an obvious initial shock, but since then I have wasted no time in moody review of those events, in brooding over the past. The abrupt change that resulted, the difficulties of beginning life anew when approaching 60, have left no scars that I am aware of. No reason for feeling self-pity. I feel and believe that the experience has had an improving effect for me. I sincerely hope so. Moreover, I can say that there is not one of those men with whom I would not be willing to speak calmly and dispassionately, to whom I would not be willing to provide food, lodging, or whatever else he might need. If enmity exists, it is not on my side. I can even believe that at least some among them might express a similar attitude toward me, though feeling compelled not to do so because of the organization to which they belong.
Summing up the liberating breakthrough Christianity brought, one source, Robert Banks, gives this effective presentation. And Banks says, quote, "There is a new liberty towards God which dispels fear and leads to freedom in his presence of a most intimate kind. This results in service to God which is quite free in character. It also leads to a new freedom toward others. This includes freedom from the fear of others' judgments, as well as from one's own attempts to manipulate them. It also includes freedom in the communication of one's thoughts, expression of one's emotions, the opening up of one's life, and the sharing of one's possessions. Indeed, the free service of others, the voluntary giving of oneself in love to them, is at the very heart of this conception of freedom."
Banks continues, "So this freedom granted by God not only transfers men and women out of a broken relationship with God and a defective solidarity with men into a new community with both, but also inclines them to live the kind of life that will extend and deepen that new community itself. Ray concludes with, ways in which these benefits of freedom can be shared and enjoyed in communion with others certainly merits our serious thought and consideration.
I'm so glad that he ended with a quote from Robert Banks, because Banks has had a huge influence in the church in the last 2 generations. He's still alive, apparently, past 80 now. I think he's still teaching at Fuller Seminary. But the reason he made a splash is that Robert Banks was an ordained Anglican minister who actually resigned his position because he felt so strongly about the clergy-laity distinction in the older churches. And he was very instrumental in starting the house church movement, which has gained great traction, not just in evangelical churches, but in Anglican churches, or especially in the Far East. It's become the model of church life for so many. So to see Ray Franz interacting with Robert Banks toward the end of his life, it was for me very encouraging.
Even in our doing this ministry, we've met so many lovely ex-witnesses who are hungry for Scripture and hungry for fellowship and reading Scripture together and talking on things and having that freeness to express themselves, their doubts, their questions, their convictions as they come upon them is lovely. It is possible to have communion and fellowship with others.
Especially on that small church, in that small church model that Banks and Ray Franz are obviously encouraging here. I think you had a thought about his sentiments here too.
Yes, I also thought when he talks about if he were to meet up with people who he had served with in the governing body, his reaction to them, and I couldn't help but think, when we left, we did say to those that we were able to communicate with, which wasn't many, that they were always welcome in our home, like my family and a few of our close friends. And that still holds true. I would be so happy to see any of them show up at my door or try and contact us. I would be so happy, and I know I wouldn't feel any I wouldn't bring up things of the past or how much time has gone by. I'd be just so happy that they were in my community again or in my association again.
Yeah. And I feel that those who don't feel that way are probably doing what Ray repudiates here, as when he says, I've wasted no time in moody review of those events, in brooding over the past. To the extent we feed that negativity, I think it will feed our response if indeed those situations ever arose. Yeah,
we'd want to be happy that even if they haven't left the witnesses, that they're willing to be in communication with you. Would be such a good step towards healing and just continuing your friendships.
Where they left off? Yeah. Next, chapter 18, a congregation of free people, and Ray leads off his discussion with James 2 verse 12, and that text says, keep on speaking in such a way and keep on doing in such a way as those do who are going to be judged by the law of a free people. James 2:12. Next time.